Welcome to Bird Camp Radio, where the coveys rise from the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and the shelf rock ledges. Here at camp, the fire's always glowing, the dogs are never far, and the stories of birds, wild places, and the upland life are just beginning. This is Bird Camp Radio. Before we get into today's episode, I want to thank a company Rachel and I personally trust, Pet Commute. We have worked with them several times ourselves, and I can tell you firsthand, they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they give frequent transport updates. That peace of mind matters, especially when it's your dog. If you're a breeder, buyer, trainer, running field dog trials, traveling to a hunt, or honestly just need to get a pet somewhere safely, Pet Commute is a perfect fit for bird dog folks. They offer free transportation quotes, and make sure to mention Bird Camp Radio to get 10% off your pet's travel. Check the link in the show notes, our social media bios, or the comments. I highly recommend them. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bird Camp Radio podcast. I'm your host, Kellen Golightly. We're excited to be here today for episode 39 of Bird Camp Radio with James Smith. He sent in his bio a little bit earlier, and I'm going to read that for us real quick. James, or J.C. Smith, is a lifelong upland hunter and breeder of Ryman-type English Setters based in New York. After retiring from a 42-year career in water quality in New York's Finger Lakes region, he continues to spend much of his time hunting birds and preserving the traditions of classic bird dogs. JC began hunting grouse while in college, but his passion truly took off after purchasing his first English setter nearly 40 years ago. That dog introduced him into a community of dedicated bird hunters and breeders, shaping a lifetime pursuit of upland hunting. Much of his early hunting took place at Connecticut Hill Wildlife Management Area in New York, home to Cornell University's historic ruffed grouse research, along with decades spent attending traditional grouse and woodcock camps in northern New York. Over the years, his hunting expanded beyond the Northeast to include Wisconsin, South Dakota, and Idaho, where he now pursues prairie grouse, Hungarian partridge, chukar, and the occasional pheasant. Last year alone, he hunted with his dogs in 7 different states. For nearly 4 decades, JC has been involved in breeding Ryman-type English Setters. About 10 years ago, he joined a small group of like-minded breeders through RymanSetters.com, where they advocate for ethical breeding practices and work to preserve the Ryman Setter as an authentic, purpose-bred hunting dog for serious upland hunters. Today, JC continues to breed, train, and hunt with his setters throughout the year. While modern hunters have more opportunities to learn through social media and shared experiences, he has developed a preference for hunting alone, enjoying the solitude that comes with time in the uplands. He also shares his passion through Sugar Creek Setters, where fellow bird hunters can connect with him to discuss upland birds, bird dogs, and the traditions that continue to shape the sport. James, we're excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
Very good. I'm excited and very flattered to be here. Thank you, Kellen.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate your time to come on here and your willingness to be able to share more about who you are and what you do within upland hunting. And going off of and considering your bio, we are pretty excited to dig into that today. But before we get into that section, as many of you know, and for new listeners, we like to play a quick game of rapid fire around the campfire with each one of our guests. This consists of 10 questions related to upland game hunting. It is timed, so we do have a leaderboard, and we'll release that at the end of the podcast. So stay tuned to that. But if you don't have any questions, James, on how it works, I think we're ready to go.
Fire away.
All right, here we are. Favorite wild bird to chase?
Any grouse.
Most challenging bird?
Prairie chickens.
Favorite dog trait?
Loyalty.
Best bird for eating?
Rough grouse. No,
Go
woodcock.
to go to
Honestly,
field snack.
any kind bar type product.
Oh yeah. Dream hunting destination.
Northern New York.
Favorite month to hunt.
October.
Game bag or vest.
Um, Boy, at this point, I can't remember. The new one I have now, I love. It's very popular brand. I have to pass because I can't remember.
Solo hunt or with a group.
Solo, honestly.
Lead or still shot.
Non-toxic.
There we go. That's it. It's a little bit more difficult than one of these days I'm gonna to have somebody do it to me and they make up the questions and because everybody's like,
Yeah.
you think it'd be so easy, but
Oh, that's it's fun. Final rise. Now I remember.
final rise, right?
I wore the traditional vest for years. Wore a few out, and the new style vests are just brilliant. It is so much better. I went to Pheasant Fest for the first time 2 years ago, and you could shop every brand of vest. They all had cool stuff. That's the one I picked, and it's great. It just fixes a bunch of old problems.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep.
2 years ago we got me one, and honestly, I'd never go back to anything else. Don't
Yeah.
even feel like carrying anything.
And very close friends that I hunt with pick two different brands from what I have, and that's their. It has to be that. Good for them, right?
Oh
Everything
yeah.
about this is personal. A lot of it is very subjective.
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
definitely agree. I definitely do. Hey, well, we're excited to have you on today, James, and to get to know you a little bit more through what you do in upland game. And as we can see with your bio, you have done quite a bit over the years, especially in the setter setting. And we would like to get started on where it all began for you. Where did upland game hunting find its way into the picture?
Right. Um, as a teenager, I did some general upland game hunting with my brother. My father would take us out sometimes in the fall. We'd sit in the woods and hunt squirrels with shotguns and 22s. I grew up in the city of Albany in the east end of part of New York State. A few times my brother and I would actually take a shotgun each, stuff our jeans full of shot shells, run down the street, cross the New York State Thruway, which is New York State's primary major interstate toll road. And when we crossed the Thruway, we would be out of the city of Albany and we would hunt on this tiny little farm that was surrounded by suburbia. Sometimes we got a rabbit, sometimes we got nothing. One time we got a fox. Many times we would have to take a long walk through suburbia and through the city of Albany with our shotguns and our game or lack thereof. I think that's the best memory of my real start. But when I got to college, I took an interest in grouse hunting. Especially my last year, I had some opportunities to get out. I lived in the city of Ithaca, which is close to Connecticut Hill. And, my bio mentions the rough grouse study that was performed there. Connecticut Hill is an area that is now a wildlife management area. It's land that was acquired by the state of New York in probably the early 1930s. People abandoned farmland or they were relocated to better land in the Midwest or elsewhere because the land had run out and it was mostly abandoned open ground. And the Natural Resources program at Cornell spent a multi-year effort studying rough grouse populations in the woodlots and the brush lots and the farmland as it was reclaimed. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a 2-inch thick red book, very dense with information that resulted from that study. It's very collectible in, sort of the older time New England, northeastern states, grouse hunting community folks. And that produced a lot of graduate students that went on to run wildlife management and other natural resource programs. So I had a housemate in college who had access to a fleet car from the ag school, and we went out on the weekends with a fleet car. If we ever got stuck in the snow, we would have gotten our butts kicked big time. So we poked around Connecticut Hill and a couple of other places there. And that's when I got my taste. But as my bio says, and I'm sure this is not a unique experience, I really didn't learn a lot about grouse hunting until I got a dog. And you follow the dog around and the dog teaches you. So, that was the start. It wasn't until I was about 27, 28 years old, I could consider having a dog. And I had moved to a community on Lake Ontario in Western New York and joined the local gun club, the Sodas Bay Sportsman Club in the village of Sodas Point on Lake Ontario. And the club president was a guy named Bob. Bob and I got along well. It was basically a skeet shooting club. He shot in the beer leagues in the winter and then later in the summer. And Bob had an English setter named Nick. And he talked about bird hunting with his dog. And it was like King David saw Bathsheba. I saw Nick and I had to have one. And Bob said, well, my father and I have always had English setters, and we had a run of bad luck with dogs that had bad hips. But we go to a fella now named Warren Shekels, who he's retired from breeding. He had a very important impact on what today we call the Ryman-type English Setter. And he sent me to Warren. And I went there. Warren had a 7-month-old dog that needed a home, and I bought her, and it just went rolling from there. I was really lucky. At that time, I had been mowing lawns to make ends meet. And one of my lawn customers was an officer in the local historical society, and they were looking for a resident caretaker in a museum that is a lighthouse. And I had my dog, I had that dog in the lighthouse for 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And had my first litter of puppies born there. That was pretty fun little anecdote. And so that was my start.
Wow.
When I,
That's unique.
Yep. Along the way, where I was working, I got sent to a training program for conservation people across New York State. And I met a gentleman named Barlow at the end of the day. At the training program, you were there for 4 or 5 days, so people went into town, bought a 6-pack of beer, sat around in the lounge, and got to know each other. And I learned that Barlow was a grouse hunter. Cool coincidence, Barlow's family farm abuts Connecticut Hill. Another little historical thing, Barlow's aunt taught in a one-room schoolhouse on Connecticut Hill. People who know that area probably can find the schoolhouse foundation. And I said, I just got this dog and I want to do more grouse hunting. So he and I went out, hunted a few times my first winter with that dog. Her name was Tess. And the next summer he calls up and he says, I know these fellas from Corning, New York, and they've invited me to go on their bird hunting trip to Lewis County, New York. From Utah, Lewis County's not a terribly important, certainly, but if you know New York, Lewis County sits between what is called the Tug Hill and the Adirondack Mountains proper. And the
Okay.
Tug Hill traditionally is really good grouse and woodcock hunting. So I joined those fellas in 1989 and for 25 years went to their camp for anywhere between 5 and 10 days stay. And we hunted for dinner. If it was pouring rain and there was no fresh meat in camp, you went out and you hunted in the pouring rain. And it sounds like a brag. We never ate anything but fresh game for dinner every night for 25 years. It was a great time, and that's where I learned really the great bulk of my grouse and woodcock hunting knowledge. Where I learned to work with my dog. Most of the people who were in that camp, there were anywhere between 3 and say 10 people that would be part of the core group or guests. Most of them were English setter people, but we had labs, short hairs, Brittany's, some other breeds. So you saw other people, and we broke up usually in small groups every day, figured out where to hunt without being in each other's way, and that was a really great tradition.
That is neat. I don't think many people can say that they've had that opportunity to be able to do what you've done throughout your life with it.
Well, maybe it's not that unique experience, but it was important to me. The folks I went with had been going there since the early 50s, and they met local people actually as a result of trespassing and turned that into an invitation to come back, stay in our camp that was built to support a commercial maple syrup operation. That part of New York State is a maple syrup factory, and the family ran a big outfit, and they built a camp basically like a kitchen and a dormitory for the people who worked in the woods. The family that held that tradition, where I was a guest and later a little bit of an organizer for the trip over the years, they actually burnt the camp down to the ground by accident
Oh,
and were invited to go back, and they used that camp probably for 60 years continuously. We're suffering the same population issues that many other of the northeastern states particularly are seeing, and over the years the grouse hunting was not as good as it was. And the woodcock flights and the local birds are there. That has, and certainly, our partners in wildlife management are documenting how those numbers have declined too. But it was abundant hunting. Wild birds are the way to really develop and fine tune a good dog. All those things. It was a good experience.
oh,
We
for
had
sure.
physicians in camp. I highly recommend bringing a physician to camp anytime you can. The only thing that tops that is having a veterinarian in camp, which in that community we never had one of those.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. So that continued for about 25 years. And that while I wasn't traveling too much, and a good part of that was a function of work. You get only so many vacation days, you have some other things going on. And that was my big focus. I could take other weekend trips. I'm about 2.5 hours from the Tug Hill area. Could, if you really wanted to do it, you could make it as a day trip. And here in the Finger Lakes, we had very good grouse hunting as well. In fact, where I live now, which is about an hour and a half south of Sodas Point, where I lived when I got my first dog. I would drive down there to hunt on state forest lands that are now 10 or 15 minutes from the house. Those were really, I would say, abundant days as far as bird contact opportunities and all that. And our covers here have matured, and we have less strong habitat, so travel became a necessity and an opportunity, and that also came out of spending time with other people.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, like with, I mean, I know for me, like living in Utah, I think of someone from New York hunting. It's a little bit of a different, like I think a big city. I've been to New York. I've only been to New York City.
New
And
York is yeah, pardon me, go ahead.
yeah, so it's like putting the two worlds together. It's crazy to see that, and it's interesting to be able to see how you've been able to do it throughout your life and how it's changed. Do you know how much? Kind of putting you on the spot, and if you don't know the answer, because I don't know it either, but
Sure.
do you know how much public land New York has, like private to public? I'm just curious.
Uh, the Adirondack Park is an area in New York State. Of course, it's quite a ways from here, which is larger than Yosemite, Yellowstone, and one other national park put together. Now, in saying that, the Adirondack Park is an area that is a patchwork of public and private properties. There is an enormous amount of public land there. A lot of that is not bird hunting opportunities. A lot of what we have for public land to hunt on is state forest lands or wildlife management areas that were lands that became part of the agricultural landscape as the result of timber harvests, clearing the land, people moving in. The land was productive for some short period of time, 40, 50 years, and it ran out. And a lot of that was acquired in the 20s, 30s, and 40s with state or federal dollars. We have one significant piece of Finger Lakes National Forest, used to be called the Hector Land Use Area, which is here in the Finger Lakes. That's also traditionally offered some good grouse and woodcock hunting opportunities. Again, because significant parts of it were land that went back into brushland, early successional forest. Now, where we have good habitat in many of these locations, it's a function of strong management activities that regenerate, early successional growth.
Wow.
Western New York was a strong area for pheasant hunting in the 40s, 50s, up through the early 80s, and agricultural practices, suburbanization, those kinds of things have largely displaced self-reproducing pheasant populations. New York is a surprisingly agricultural and rural place. We're over 50%, I think well over 50% forested, the whole state.
Yeah, I would have
So,
never even thought of that being the case. That's really neat. Would have never
yeah,
thought of it.
yeah.
Wow. So what's it been like for you? I mean, you in your bio you talk a little bit about how you've had the opportunity to hunt in a few different states as well. What's it been like leaving New York, and then you had your opportunities to hunt in Connecticut as well, right?
Well, I
Um,
hunted at what I called Connecticut Hill. That is that wildlife management area that's
oh,
part of
that's right.
grouse management history near Ithaca, New York. My out of state experiences are almost all an outgrowth of my association with other breeders of this style dog. So the Ryman type of setter within the community that I'm in, we would define it as a dog that is like the style of dog that George Ryman bred. He was a major influence in hunting English setters, mostly, and I'm going to trespass on some other people's interpretations. I'm going to say mostly before 1950. In the late teens or early 1920s, he started breeding dogs from the types that were emerging in the United States. He had two locations. He bred a lot of dogs. He wanted he didn't participate in what was present and developing as field trials. He didn't participate, and I'm trespassing a little because he dabbled, but he largely was not focused at all on field trials or shows. He wanted a nice looking dog that you went bird hunting with. He was a market hunter. He started out as a market hunter shooting grouse and other birds that got shipped to restaurants in Philadelphia, New York City, or what have you.
Wow.
So his tradition under him was strong until about 1955 when he had a stroke. And it's not about being a George Ryman fanboy, but this style of dog has existed. It's associated with the dogs that you see in calendar art in the cover of Field and Stream in 1959, and I don't mean that to be glib, but you get the tradition, the sense of culture, right? It was the companion for the guy that went out Saturday morning. Sometimes he took his kid. You had a dog that you worked with. And this isn't to brush aside competitive venues or other styles of dogs, but when I got involved in these dogs, we called them dual types or New England grouse dogs or something like that. And it really wasn't until two people, Lisa Weiss in Island Park, Idaho, and a now long retired and esteemed grouse and woodcock biologist down in West Virginia, Walt Lesser, co-wrote a book titled The Real Ryman Setter. And when they came out with that, everybody who was interested in this style dog learned to call them Ryman types. George Ryman bred Rymans. We're breeding them in his type. So several of us who had been working with each other on breeding were confidants, had some relationship for going back to the 80s, got together about, I'm going to have a hard time with dates, but probably 15 years ago, in reaction to some breeding practices that we were unhappy about, not authentic about health certifications. So we created a group and said we need to say what it is we want as a dog. Doesn't have to be what you want, but we wanted to put some definition on it. And we really wanted to put some definition on what is credible, appropriate breeding practices to produce a healthy companion hunting dog. If you're a field trialer, you have organizations that help you with that. If you are a dog show person, if you're a versatile hunting dog person, all those are good places. You create some definition. We're not trying to be an organization. We're still a confederation. We don't have officers and all that sort of thing. So we like that. But I talk about that because that goes to how I started to branch out. Having dogs is not always cheap. You can find workarounds, right? When I got my first dog, I could barely afford my car payment, and I was mowing lawns and doing all that stuff to make ends meet. but if you want to do more, well, I got to be able to do that. I got more connected to these people, and I got invited to go to their hunting camp traditions. We had gatherings. We had, for a few years, we would try and gather together. We went to Kansas. The weather's not bad in Kansas in January. Most of our people could get there. We wanted to get together and see each other's dogs in the field. Of course, it's a hunting trip and you want to bird hunt, but it was about making personal connections. And so that was a really good deal. And we realized after a while it was way too hard for most of our people to do something like that in January. If you're coming, I make some pretty atrocious drives. I feel like I'm beating myself on the back with a green willow branch, like a devout monk. But for a lot of our folks, the drives and all that, and the gambles on weather were really problematic. But we get together. Now I go to a group. The folks that I'm associated with are also Ryman breeders, but they're also trainers. And that group is in South Dakota in the end of September for prairie chickens and sharptails. That's a really good trip because I'm there with people. Most are really focused on training as opposed to, at least in terms of initial association, breeders or English setter people. So it's important to get somebody else's interpretation, right? See what their standards are. Get brought up a little short on something that they know and you thought you knew. But there's another really cool camp in there in Wisconsin. There's 2 to 4 different parties we get together, and it's very similar to the Lewis County camp I went to. Friends went to Wisconsin, needed vet services on a trip. They were renting an apartment in a village in northwest Wisconsin somewhere, and the veterinarian said, well, when you come back next year, you should stay at our camp. So they've done that continuously for, I'm going to guess that one is about a 35 or 40 year tradition. So now I get to go there, see Wisconsin. Of course, that's grouse and woodcock country too, and lots of public cover. County land, state forest land, national forest land. And then back to South Dakota in late October, more focused on prairie chickens and sharptails again, but we go at least a week after the pheasant opener. So we have some pheasant hunting, but we avoid the crowds. And the other trip I'm really hoping continues to move along is going out farther west, getting into the sagebrush, and hunting some of the birds out there. And most of my partners in this were setter people. We get to see each other's dogs run. I wish I had learned early in my career what I know now about what do you see in what your dog does. We all love our dogs, and our dogs do magic stuff. Are you a pointing dog person?
I'm a little bit of both. So as of right now, I'm right where you were. I'm 25 years old, married, and me and my wife are in an apartment right now. So this is the first time in my life I haven't had a bird dog. So I grew up
You
with
got
flutter, but definitely looking towards pointing once we get a house here, hopefully soon.
yeah. So you've got an awesome start, and my interpretation, and if somebody else sees it different, that's fine. But the really cool thing about a pointing dog is the magic is not something you can teach the dog. You can teach the dog things that help you work with the dog. You can teach the dog things they really don't want to do, which is be steady on flush, be steady on shot, and that sort of thing. But the dog finding and pointing the bird, that's the super electric part. When you learn to see in your dog's posture and its behavior what the bird is doing that you can't see. And many people are now observing that's the great thing about hunting in the Great Plains and Western states because you can see your dog a lot more. I love rough grouse hunting, but when in good cover in New York, if the dog's 30 yards out, you're not going to see it, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I
And
know. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
and and maybe a little bit of what came up earlier in this interview about hunting alone sounds a little bit solitary. It's not about being a curmudgeon. It's realizing that I'm more in tune to watching my dog. I want to be able to go where the dog goes. I want to focus on understanding what the dog's doing.
No, I love that. I love that. And if you ever get the opportunity to come out here to Utah, we get you out in sagebrush.
Okay, okay.
Yes, for sure. We have great opportunities out here.
Mm-hmm. So you're hunting sage grouse, and you probably get in some of those rocky areas with chukars, right?
Oh yeah. So for us here in Utah, we have quite the variation of birds. Of course, a lot of guys around here run GSPs because of our chukar populations. They like those long-ranging bird dogs for that. But when it comes to our sage and sharp-tailed grouse, we actually have a draw-out system that you actually have to put in for the draw and then draw out. So I've yet to have the opportunity to hunt sage grouse or the sharp-tails. Hopefully in the future here soon, I'll draw out and have that opportunity. But we also do have quite the population of blue grouse and ruffed
Yep.
grouse here as well. Blue grouse being native here to Utah, so that's kind of fun to be able to have that. And so if you ever come out here, we'll
Thank
never.
you. Yeah, I know a gentleman who had a very influential career in federal government policy. Doing that, he was largely in Virginia, eastern states, lived near Washington, D.C. He was a rough grouse hunter, does a bunch of other cool stuff, but retired to Idaho. And he took his grouse hunting habit from Virginia, from the Appalachians, from West Virginia, and the like, and hunts them in grizzly bear country near the Tetons. I don't know if I have the grit for that, but it's really fun to hear to hear his stories about that.
That is awesome. All right, everyone. Quick shout out to our friends at Pet Commute. If you ever tried coordinating dog transport yourself, you know it's not simple. Whether it's a new pup coming home, a finished dog heading to a buyer, a field trial trip, or even, let's be honest, your wife needing her little mutt transported safely, Pet Commute handles it professionally. Rachel and I have personally transported with them, and I can confidently say they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they keep owners updated the entire trip. They offer free quotes, and if you mention Bird Camp Radio, you'll get 10% off your pet's travel. Hit the link in the show notes, comments, or our socials. Yeah, that'd be quite the experience to be able to hunt. I've hunted a little bit of Idaho, but nothing up north into some of that country where it gets a little. Some areas, like you said, grizzly bear country, big time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about hitting up Montana because I haven't seen it. There's some different styles. You know, you can hunt huns near grain fields. You've got some other birds that are out in sagebrush. They've got some pheasant populations. Like getting back to that thing about watching the dog, I have a male now. His short name is Finn, and there's a fun story about Finn's sire that I'll get to here in a moment. But I bought Finn because of his pedigree and some breeding expectations down the road from classic setters in Missouri, Frank and Fran Thompson. And Finn was just at the right age for his first fall as a bird dog. He was 8 months, I think, going into September, maybe 7 months. So we started out locally in New York. We went to New Hampshire. No, excuse me. We started out in South Dakota in late September, came home, hunted New Hampshire, where I could team up with a friend who got a dog from us for a long weekend, came back home, went to Wisconsin, South Dakota, and then out to Idaho. And in his first year, he worked on 8 different species of upland birds. And there were 2 really cool things that came out from being out in the sagebrush. One was now the season wasn't open, so I'm not pulling the trigger, but he found a couple flocks of sage grouse. And when they got up off the ground, I thought, holy cow, they're little gray turkeys. Because, here in the Northeast, it does happen that your dog will point or flush turkeys. I've actually killed a couple of turkeys on the wing in season that the dogs have boosted up. Not common, but it happens eventually. That was a pretty cool thing. But the other was hunting out in the open areas with him and my other 2 dogs. I have 2 older females. You're going along out in the open, and the dog's out 200 yards. The dog that's 60 yards away in the grouse woods is out there, and you hear people talk about, well, my dog adjusts. They know what's going on or something like that. I stop to tie my shoelace, and the dog that is 200 yards away is suddenly right in my business before I can even stand up straight and reload my gun. Another occasion, I'm climbing a really steep hill, and my friend Cliff is watching me. He's going to hunt on the other side of the road. He's got a little bit different kind of cover. I have to climb this really steep hill for about 5 minutes to get to a plateau, and the whole time, every time I stop to rest, the dog I have out of the truck stops and watches me. If I move, she's hunting. My other dog, Finn, again, I stop to tie my relace. He comes back. He's right in my business. I think that's what's going on is the dog's range. If your dog is connected to you, your dog's range is a function of what it needs to keep track of you. The classic story of this style of dog, or maybe any other breed of dog, if you're grouse hunting, is they're working through the woods and they stop on a little knoll and they look over their shoulder and you make eye contact and the dog goes right back to its business. The dog's got to be close enough that it can keep a track of you with its eyes and its ears.
Right.
Because the cover's thick. You go out to South Dakota or Kansas quail hunting, out in the sagebrush. Now the dog doesn't have to really work to keep track of you, but they know where you are.
Right.
Yeah. And my friends Cliff and Lisa Weiss in Island Park, Idaho, they really prefer evaluating their young dogs out in the open because their hunting practice is evaluating young dogs. They're running a big enough string. They're breeding in purposes. Their plans are intensive enough. They're really not hunting so much as constantly working through what does this dog do? What's its native latent genetic opportunity? So I've liked learning that from other people, and the landscapes, the Great Plains, the sagebrush country. If you understand hunting and fishing, and I know anybody listening to this is just going to nod their head, there's nothing new. There is so much going on if you're paying attention. It is not desolate. It is not lonely to me. There's so many cool things going on.
Oh, I completely agree. A lot of people just surpass it and be like, yeah, no. But like you said, if you're in tune with it, there's a lot going on, and it's
Yeah,
its own beauty.
yeah, yeah.
It really is.
So it, the travel is improving what I'm doing with my own dogs. Of course, part of it is our upland bird hunting in the Northeast is still there, but it's not as nearly as strong as it used to be. So you got to get out the door. And since I've retired, I put my major focus on the dog work, how I deal with them at home, purchasing property to do exercise, to do training, all those kinds of things.
No, that's a great opportunity. Being able to be retired and being able to
Yeah,
focus on these things.
yeah, yeah. So that's working out well. You get into all the other nuances, learning to shoot better, getting to work through different styles of guns. What do you like? You know, so many of us are gravitating towards over-unders or doubles, I think. If you're a broader purpose person, maybe you're shooting uh, a semi-auto or something like that. But you know, there's that whole community too.
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely see that. Oh, that is awesome. And I mean, this has been so much fun being able to get to know you, James, and what you're
thank you.
doing out there. This has been great, and getting to learn more about the Ryman setter type that you're talking about here. But before we close, we always like to ask one question that we ask literally everybody before we end, and that's, do you have any advice that you would give new upland hunters who are coming into the tradition, or even guys who have been in it for their whole lives? And you could answer it both ways. You can answer both of them, or just one simple, whatever, whenever, or however you want to.
I think there is so much excellent information. Folks like you that are doing podcasts, all the training programs that are out there, the videos, you can find so many resources about where to go that weren't not obvious or as handy to reach or easily consumed. I feel it's a little overwhelming. Pick a couple things that you're going to try and do well. If however how you train your dog, you can't do everything with your dog, and a trainer doesn't try and do everything. They pick one or two things and build on that. Learn to hunt a particular bird. Build on those things. If you try and be like everybody else, um, it's too watered down.
I love that.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of
yeah,
the day, we got to be our own selves.
sure, sure. And it's a personal, as I said earlier. I think many things about hunting, fishing, these kinds of activities, they can be social, they can be very solitary, they are personal and subjective. And if you think something is the best way to do it, keep an open mind, but you know, do what you're doing well.
I love that.
Makes
I feel like that's great advice, and that's why I asked this question, because you guys can do it better than I can, and I love being able to accumulate all of the great advice that you guys have given, and like I said, being able to give it out to the community and share it with everybody, because I feel like it's, even if it's something we already know, it's always good to be able to hear it through a different perspective at times. So I love
Very
it.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on, James. I appreciate your time, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed this as much as we have when it comes out. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yep. I am again flattered and grateful to be here, and good luck with what you're doing.
Thank you. You're welcome here anytime.
Okay.
Thank you again, everyone, for listening to the Bird Camp Radio podcast. I hope you enjoyed episode 39 with JC as much as I did. But before you go, we need to release his time for the rapid fire around the campfire game. JC, your time was 1 minute and 22 seconds, which puts you in 33rd place out of everybody. So thank you for playing with us. And once again, everybody, you can find Bird Camp Radio and watch it on YouTube, along with listening to it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. Also, you can find us on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Bird Camp Radio as well. Thank you again. Until next time. You've been listening to Bird Camp Radio, where the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and shelf rock ledges always call us back. Until next time, keep your dogs close, your shot true, and your campfire stories ready to share. We'll see you back at camp. Don't miss out on the next episode, where we'll host our next guest on the podcast. You don't want to miss this one. Thank you.